Okay, welcome, Claire, to the New Paradigm Intimacy podcast. I feel, really soft and really open about this conversation today because we just went on such a deep journey together through this creation of yours, or co-creation, I should say, that we were all a part of, called Love in Quarantine, a little online series that was like totally creating this new shift around online dating and even relating in itself. And I know that that is so relevant to what we share on this podcast, in an area that we haven't necessarily delved into so much in depth. And I was so surprised, like being a participant on the show with you, how much I got to look at in myself that was unseen in this area. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this with the listeners as well, around what your experience was and why this creation was important to you. So before we jump in to all the juiciness, we'll start with our first question, which is, when was your last self-pleasure practice and what did that look like for you?
Well, first, thank you so much, Miss Lauren, for having me on the podcast. And I'm feeling quite frozen, actually, with that question. It's actually making me feel quite uneasy because, as you know, doing a show called Love in Quarantine, I actually found myself in quarantine. I was really ill, and that really made me I guess, stop most of my practices in general. And I really just rested. And for me, I didn't dive deep over the last few months into a lot of self-pleasure. Well, at least not sexual self-pleasure. For me, it was just the little things that I could do, like blow up a spa in the back of the house we were living, and just taking time to be in the warm water and just nurture my body. And so a lot of that time, that would just look like massaging my breasts, and there'd be an awareness of my yoni, but I haven't for quite some time really felt like delving deep into my relationship with her. But it's funny that we're having this conversation right now, because I did some journaling on some resentments that I have at the moment, and it all came back to my relationship with my vagina and how I've really disengaged with her. I seem to more engage with my sexual energy with creation, creating lots of products, or with my partner. I definitely had a really kinky sex experience with my partner on the day that I actually birthed the idea of Love in Quarantine. And so that's kind of like the sexual experience that's still in my mind, because it was really quite kinky. And the fact that then God just talked to me for 3 or 4 hours about what I was going to birth with this online dating show. And but I feel quite sad, actually, just thinking about how much my self-pleasure practices have really not been a priority in my life recently. And that actually, if I'm going to be really honest, this is already getting into radical honesty here, Lauren, is that when you were chosen as the wild card in the show, and the morning I woke up, and actually, this actually is my last time of self-pleasure. I woke up on the morning that you were going to come onto the show, and I woke up with my yoni burning. And I felt a lot of fire in my body. And actually, now that I think about it, I was lying down in bed. I was just waking up, and I could feel this energy move through me. And I remember just moving into self-pleasure, and then my partner waking up in the morning. And I'm not usually a morning person when it comes to sexy time. And he's just like, ooh, she's into it this morning. And actually, we had a really beautiful sexual experience. And then you were on the show that night. as our wild woman. And I thought, oh, this is another reason this woman's in my life. She's going to start waking up my sexy time. So that's actually a really true story. And I'd forgotten that, but actually that is probably my last time that I really connected to myself in that way. So that's really quite ironic that your energy coming onto the show really amplified that for me. So thank you.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I tend to get that feedback that I activate the aliveness. So let's see what happens after this podcast.
I've got my partner ready.
Cool. But I also, what I was feeling when you were sharing that as well is like, we do go through as women, like with our creativity and with our sexuality, we do go through cycles, just like we go through our monthly cycles as well. And there will be times that we have this period of like inner winter with our sexuality where it's like not necessarily on all the time. And it's like, I think it's important. And that's why I love the variety that comes out in these first questions that we ask, that, yeah, there's like, if we're constantly as women expecting to have these wild orgasmic self-pleasure practices and we're doing it all the time, then we're kind of just instilling this idea of patriarchal ways of thinking that women always have to be sexually on. But really, you know, all self-pleasure is just tuning into our body and what's alive. And for you, it was like, I want to have spas all the time. And that's beautiful. That's really honoring. And that is self-pleasure, being able to deeply listen like that. So yeah, I really appreciate your honesty with that sharing. Mm. So, there's also been a big piece already come up around how you work with your creativity in this way, because we understand like sexual energy does link to our creativity in this way. And there was so much that was being channeled towards this project that came through for you. And you mentioned to me, like, this is the biggest project that you produced through this time. So let's kind of, take the listeners back to what was going on in your life when this whole project came into conception.
Yeah, amazing. So rewinding pre-corona, I was traveling around Australia with my one-woman show called The Spiritual Love Guru. And the show features a few different archetypes. So there's Crystal Indigo Light, who is my spiritual protector. And then there's Devil Woman, who is one of my sexy shadow selves. And throughout the show, I share about my journey of having Poland syndrome and only developing one breast, and what journey I've been with that. And part of the show was also helping people find love, whether that was self-love or for them to actually meet someone in the audience that night that maybe they could date. So when Corona hit, I had to postpone the show. And I'd also just been performing at Freedom Fest in the Gold Coast. And they had some speakers there talking about how powerful Facebook groups are. And I had a Facebook group, but I just never really felt it was the juicy way for me to actually engage with an audience. I mean, even though I've got a strong presence online, especially on my personal Facebook page, I still feel more connected to people in person. And I know that I'm definitely more engaging in person when people see me on a stage rather than on an online forum. So I was never rushing into having a Facebook group and making that a big part of my business. But I just kept seeing around me during the Corona period, every, Tom, Dick and Harry creating a Facebook group. And I just kept saying to myself, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then, as I said, I had some kinky sex with my partner. It was actually our 3-year anniversary. And I'd made this list of all the things that he could pick from during the day to explore. And one of them was anal sex. And that was just something that was on the list. And it's not, a practice that we do regularly. But then it was so funny. It just naturally, orgasmically, our sexual just energy turned into that kind of play in a really beautiful, innocent way. And then he fell like asleep, on my body, like later that evening. And God, inspiration, creativity just started talking to me. And I'm used to this because whether I'm in the shower or I'm playing my piano, or whether everyone else is asleep in the house but I'm wide awake, God talks to me quite clearly. And the message was that you're going to start an online TV show. It's going to be like The Bachelor, but it's going to be more a spiritual bachelor experience. That you're going to have a range of creative, entrepreneurial women on the show. And yes, they're going to be single and want to find love, but also they all had big, important messages to share with the world. And because what I do in the background of my business when I'm not performing is I help creatives build their brands and have a sexy relationship with money and business. And so it just made sense that I would actually work really closely with these women who were all quite similar to me in lots of ways, and also really quite diverse and different, and quite diverse and different from each other in lots of different ways as well. Maybe not in color, which was disappointing, but in age and what they were really passionate about and their message. And I just felt really, really, really called to create this show that a community could actually watch live and participate in, with the actual hope that even the community might find love during this whole corona quarantine period, and explore what Zoom online dating could be. I mean, I've been in a long distance relationship before, and at that time, Skype was the in thing, and I was having Skype sex and Skype dating, and, I learned lots about myself through that. And so I just wanted to play and follow inspiration. And I literally just got the idea that night and talked to my housemate, who's a single bachelor, just recently moved to Melbourne. And I said, I'm thinking about doing this bachelor show. Do you want to be the bachelor? And he just recently had his heart broken and was in Melbourne in isolation, not really knowing anyone. And he was just like, I'll try anything for connection right now. And so I literally the next day had a bachelor on board, put on social media that I was looking for single women that were creatives and entrepreneurial at heart. And within a week had all of these applications from around Australia and Australians that lived in other countries applying to be part of the program. And I had a pretty lengthy application process, as you would know. And that then really helped me to narrow down the search. And then I interviewed all of these amazing women. And truthfully, every single woman I interviewed, all would have been amazing on the show. However, I felt a real intuitive nudge towards the ones that I actually did pick. And as you know, we went live, and by the second episode, one of the participants didn't feel like it was in alignment for them anymore. And we looked for a wild woman. And that's when Miss Lauren Renee comes into the picture, ladies and gentlemen, is that you were actually, your application was one of the very first of the wild card women that we received. And I didn't look at it straight away because I just wanted to wait until they all came in. But my intuition straight away went when I looked at your application that you were the one. And so, yeah, we had an interview, and episode 3, the morning I woke up aroused and erotic, and then you came onto the show.
Oh my gosh. I love all of this so much. There's so much alignment in this conversation already. Because we actually, the first piece that I'm like, this is amazing, is we just released new paradigm intimacy butt plugs called the Anal Alchemist.
Oh, amazing.
To help people in their entrepreneurial journeys to release and surrender and open. And this is how your big creative orgasm happened.
Nothing like a good bit of anal on a 3-year anniversary.
Absolutely. And to birth your creative ideas, it's like it gets to be like this. It is a real magical creation. And what I'm hearing from you is like you've just allowed this all to move through you and come to you and trust. And this is what the whole process of sex and creativity and all of it get to be like. It's just allowing and surrendering and letting the co-creation happen. And yeah, I just see so much, like when we first had that interview, I could just see the bigger picture of what was being created, because something in my body that day, like had you not made that Facebook group, no one, I don't know who invited me into it, but someone in our network of mutual friends invited me in. And then that post just like jumped out on my timeline that day. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be on, if I apply for that, I'm going to end up on it. And I just knew. So it's very, very interesting. And I know like you have been a performer for a long time and have had an amazing career, and it's not always been this hasn't always been the way that you've really flowed with your creativity. So I'd love for you to kind of share like what's been those profound shifts in your journey that you've really had to become, I'd say, more embodied in the way that you bring your creation through.
Well, I think we'd need to go back to when I was 8, because I was a dancer and all I wanted to do was dance. And my dad came home one day and announced that he'd been retrenched from work. And I got told that I could no longer continue my dance classes. And I was absolutely devastated. And I went down the street and I saw this little boy playing the violin, and people were throwing him money. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I'm learning the recorder at school. People would pay me to like play some music. And so then I started my 8-year career of being a busker. And why this is so, I think, powerful looking back on this story as an entrepreneur, as a performer, was when I was 8, I just didn't give a shit of what anyone thought of me. And I just thought, I need money to be able to do my dance classes. And I really enjoy playing the recorder. And I really enjoy people looking at me and witnessing me. So I'm just going to go out there and do it. And so from the age of 8 to 16, I busked. And that really taught me how to be in the moment, because I'd be playing the same damn songs like for 8 years. And to make that entertaining, I really had to work off moment to moment, like the local Ivanhoe people that were shopping for their fruit and veg. And the woman that paid me $2 last week, I've got to do something special this week so that she'll throw the gold coin into, my hat again. And so I really learned from a young age that if you do something that you love doing and you're passionate about, and you have a real reason, a real why for doing it, it will align and work out. Because I made a lot of money. I mean, this little 8-year-old was making about $90 an hour and paying for all my dance classes, and then went on to pay for all my school fees and anything that my parents couldn't afford, because my parents didn't have a lot of money while I was growing up. And so from that, I really have always had the mindset that you can really do whatever you want. And so at 16, I was choreographing a lot of school plays. I was choreographing a lot of local amateur theatre production shows. And lots of people were asking me to teach them dance. Now, I mean, not many 16-year-olds are going to then just say, well, I'm going to open up a business. But because I'd been busking for so long and been making money doing what I love for so long, I was just at 16 going, okay. And so I opened up a dance school at 16, and I had that for about 6 years. And that was really how I got to move into the world of facilitation and running a business. And I made all of the mistakes and everything. And the biggest mistake I made was staying in my business for a little too long and started to live my dreams of being a performer through my students. My students started having so much success. So I was very good at what I did. And I was starting to feel jealous of their success. And so even though at that time I knew nothing about authenticity and personal development and intuition, I just knew I had to get out of there and actually follow my own dreams. And so that is when I closed my first business down and followed, my intuitive pull to be a performer. And I was really ambitious, but I had one big challenge in the way, and that was that I was living a lie because I wasn't telling anyone that I had Poland syndrome and I'd only developed one breast, and I had a lot of shame and guilt around that. And so it was like every time I was trying to put myself out there, I was putting on such a big mask that no one could really feel me and no one could really connect with me. And so I just wasn't really landing much work because I wasn't trustworthy, because I was not telling the truth. I wasn't honest with myself. I wasn't honest with men I was dating. I just wasn't honest. And so over the last sort of 12, 13 years, I've been on this huge personal development journey with an amazing psychotherapist, done all the tantra workshops, all the spirituality workshops, all the business workshops. And through all of that, plus a whole lot of damn good acting training, which is actually all about learning how to be authentic, I started to actually be more truthful with myself, and in turn started being more truthful with men, and then in turn started being more truthful to my audience. And I, about 5-6 years ago, launched my book, The One Breast Goddess, Transforming Shame into Beauty. And that was the biggest turning point for me, because when I actually was telling my audience the truth, that was when they actually wanted to really hear me. And so now for the last 5-6 years, my biggest message is be authentic and do what you love. And if you're passionate about it, you've got to follow that creative inspiration. And I've been putting that message out in many, many ways. I've put on 3 one-woman shows, an online, dating show, book many, many workshops and online courses. And it doesn't matter what I'm teaching, whether I'm teaching about dating or money or business, I have the same message in everything that I share, which is really being radically honest with yourself, with others, with God, and following that creative inspiration that you are more tuned in and tapped in the more honest you are. And the more that you practice those things that you honestly feel alive about, inspiration will just talk to you more clearly and with more clarity. And I guess the other part of my journey, the biggest, piece recently, talking about what's really alive for me right now, is the thing that's really stopped me from most connecting to God and to creative inspiration is addictive behaviors. And so the last 2-3 years, I've been really delving deep into various addictions that I have that are very, very common, and breaking the shame of having those addictions, and really day by day, taking things a day at a time and living my truth each day. So, yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, there's some really, I loved hearing more about your journey with that, because especially around bringing shame into the spotlight, that, it literally for you, literally into the spotlight, because this is how people reclaim their wholeness and they bring their radiance into the world and then have the connections they desire. It is such a core piece to shifting into a new paradigm of being in all areas of life. And we're not taught to like have a safe space to express that and bring it out and create more freedom. Because at first it does feel icky and uncomfortable. And, you know, I even journeyed this on the show as well. Like there were parts of me that were in the shadow that I was holding shame around in my relating or my pursuit to find aligned love. And it was like, oh, it feels icky coming up, but I've been, like you've been on this development journey for quite some time now. And I know that on the other side of expressing that, there's so much more expansion. And so for you to be doing this work, to be actually bringing that into the performing arts in a way that is digestible to audiences that maybe haven't been exposed to that work yet is really amazing. And that's why I was so impressed with what you're bringing through. It does feel like a really unique modality in itself.
Yeah, well, for me, it's about integrating all of you. And so I'm a performance artist and a facilitator, very, very passionate about romance and spirituality. And so it was like, let's mush all of these things together. And I think that is how, you know, entrepreneurs and creatives, you know, they really go to the next level in their business, is by integrating more parts of themselves and allowing those parts to be seen. And it can be messy and it can be ugly and it can be icky at times, but the people that are actually willing to be raw, real, and radically honest, that's where real creative fulfillment and success lies, I believe.
Yes. And I would love to hear more about your piece around this passion for romance as well, and how that's kind of played out, because you shared a lot of your personal journey of finding aligned love in your life as well. So yeah, I guess there's so much conditioning to break down for everyone around like what an ideal relationship actually is. And that was the journey we really got to go on in the show. So yeah, I'd love for you to speak to what that journey was like for you as someone who is a, you know, passionate romantic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was single for so many years before I was with my current partner. In my 20s, I had a long-term partner that didn't work out. And then late 20s into my early 30s, I was single. And sometimes I really loved it and it was really nourishing. And then there were other times I was just desperately alone. And especially as the last few years before I got together with my current partner, my intuition kept telling me that my business and my career was going to amplify with a partner by my side. But the problem with that was that I then got a fantasy of what that looked like, because I would go and look at all of these power couples out there in the entrepreneurial space or in the performing arts space, in the personal development space. And I started building a fantasy of what that was for me. And that then made it very limiting for finding aligned love. And so, as I shared in the show, the book that totally changed my life was a book called The 4-Man Plan, which was all about really opening myself up to different possibilities and diversifying my type and actually breaking the type. And I went on this 2.5-year journey of dating all of these men that I would never have considered in my teens or even in my early 20s dating. I dated men a lot older than me, a lot younger than me, you know, different races, different careers, and really just try to break that mold. And then when my partner came into my sphere, I didn't even notice him because he was not my type. And he was just on a dance floor dancing with all of these other men that I was dating at the time on my 4-man plan. I didn't even notice him. I knew that he was doing the sound for this dance space, but apart from that, I really knew little about him and didn't know that within months of him seeing me on the dance floor and us having random dances, that he was growing this huge attraction for me. And it came that we were at an event, and we were dancing randomly together, and this woman came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder and gave me this envelope. And I'm like, why is someone giving me an envelope? So I just put it into my bag and forgot about it and got back to my night of dancing with Oz and different other men that were at this party. And the next day, this woman actually added me on Facebook. And I was like, what does this envelope woman want? And I opened up the envelope and it was a love poem. And I was like, envelope woman's in love with me. And in this moment, I'm opening up my mind to dating women. Like at this time, the 4-man plan was, turning into the 4-man and woman plan. And so I replied back saying, thank you so much for the lovely, love poem. And she said, it's not for me, right? And I was like, oh, okay, who's it from? And she said, you've got a secret admirer. You need to work that one out. And because I dated so many men in my community and that were at this party, I just thought, oh, this letter could be from really anyone. And I also was kind of nurturing a bit of a broken heart at the time. And I was thinking, I'm not really ready for love at the moment. And so I kind of forgot about it. And then my partner came and stalked me at an entrepreneurial branding event that I was running. And I was speaking on the stage and I said, okay, you're branding and marketing yourself in every moment. Raise your hand if you're a single man here. And these men raised their hand and I said, come and talk to me at the lunch. And I don't know how many people in a business conference, then just start putting themselves out there for dating. But I was like, you know what? You just got to put yourself out there. And Oz, my current partner, he came up to me and said, oh, I learned something really amazing from at this business conference today. I learned that you're single looking for love. And I still was so blind to it. And he then did a video testimonial that day, reading the love poem onto the video at the end of the day. And my videographer never showed me the video. So I didn't know, because he took him about 10 hours of footage at this event. I didn't know still who my secret admirer was. And then a couple of months later at Confest, if anyone that doesn't know, it's a camping hippie festival. We were doing a workshop about manifesting your dreams. And we were walking around the workshop and then we had to be partners. And I was with this random man I'd never met before. And I had to tell him what I secretly yearned for. And I said, I secretly yearn for a man to claim me and introduce me to his friends and make me his. And then we had to walk around again. And this time I was partnered with Oz. And I had to say what I secretly yearned for. So again, I said, I'm secretly yearning for a man to claim me, introduce me to his friends and make me his. And then the facilitator said to the partners, okay, now you have to act this out for 60 seconds. So for 60 seconds, Oz actually had to act out being my boyfriend. And at the end, she said, make sure they really get what they're wanting. So that was when he just claimed me and kissed me. And I'm like, for a workshop junkie, there is nothing better than having your first kiss in the middle of a workshop. So I've literally been dating him ever since that workshop. I continued doing the 4-man plan for a while and I dated a few other people, but he just kept showing up being loving, willing, and honest. And when we both just dropped the ideas of who we had to be with, he's then shown up to be the business bestie that I didn't realize I needed, because I thought I was wanting to manifest this man that was going to be on the stage with me and we were going to facilitate around the world. While instead, I'm now still in the spotlight, but he does my website, my video editing, records so much stuff for me, and really holds a really grounded space for me to be able to shine my light. And I didn't realize that that was what I really needed and actually what I really wanted. And so it's funny that when we actually drop the fantasy and the expectation, and we stop looking outwardly at what other people are creating and trying to make ourselves create what we're seeing in front of us, but actually go within and create what we really need. That was when I found my aligned love. We've been together for 3 years, and as you know, on the anniversary, we birthed love in quarantine. And that's what's been so special about our relationship is we've birthed many one-woman shows, this online show, we've birthed many online courses together, and he does all my back end, I do the front end. And it's just a really congruent relationship that I didn't actually, I just never imagined that I would have.
Amazing, amazing. I love that story so much. I'm a sucker for a good love story. I've been getting a lot of really amazing ones lately too. It's really inspiring. And yeah, I just love, I would love to know like what played out with all these men that you were dating at the same time. Were they just like this wild Clare woman? You're the wild woman of that.
Oh, I was the wild woman. I mean, for me, I would tell the men that I was dating very early on that I was doing the 4-man plan and that it was all about being loving, willing, and honest. I just think more the irony was that even though I tried to start dating men in different circles, I would always end up on a dance floor somewhere or at some workshop, and 5 of the men would all turn up. And that was what I really learned was, this energy field is that, when you're all attracted in and you're all spending time together, like you're going to bump into each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad that I was really, really honest with all of them. The most awkward moment was when I was in early stages of dating Oz, but we weren't in a committed relationship. And I'd asked him to go to this poetry night with me that I was going to be performing at, and he couldn't come. And so I then invited another man to go, but Oz actually was planning on surprising me. And so he actually turned up to surprise me at this a poetry event to come and see me perform. And here I was on this date with this other man. So this poor other man, when Oz just comes straight up to me and gives me this kiss on our date, and this other man's just like, sorry, who are you? And I'm like, oh, this is, one of the other men I'm dating. He's just come to surprise me. So, that was the moment when Oz was like, okay, you and your 4-man plan. I think that I actually want to step in here and claim you. And so he took me to Bali, and we had a beautiful holiday in Bali, and we then decided to be a committed monogamous partnership. So yeah, that was really beautiful.
That's brilliant. I love it. I think that's so important too, like breaking this whole idea that you meet someone you have this really good connection with, and so I'm just going to like go all in with this person because this is the right one. It's actually like opening up that curiosity, and for you, you just embodied full honesty and integrity and just like completely owned your desires through all of it, which is amazing. And
the other thing I wanted to say was that it never felt like he was the right one. And I think that is my biggest message for anyone out there dating or in early stages of a relationship, that it's actually okay if it doesn't feel like the right one, because we've been living in this world of movies and fantasies, for so long, that we've got this idea of what feels right. And what I found that the relationships that felt really right ended up in a lot of drama And the ones that maybe didn't feel right, but they had this groundedness and this honesty and this authenticity and this mystery, could really evolve in a really beautiful way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a super powerful message for people, because I like, especially in the spiritual community, there's so much of that romancing of this divine relationship that's going to come in and what it's going to feel like and what it's going to look like. So letting go of all of that and being open to anything, and anything can change in any moment too. Like your dynamic with someone can be different next time you see them, and then all of a sudden there's a sexual attraction or anything. It's really amazing what happens when you drop all of the conditioning and all the expectations around that.
Well, the reason that a lot of the time, and still to today, my partner cannot feel right is because he shines a light on so much of my darkness and just so many of my disowned selves. And while these men that maybe felt right, why they felt right was because they were embodying parts of self that I hadn't yet embodied. And so when I was around them, it felt really good because I was getting to ignite that part of myself. While with Oz, he is so grounded and practical and good with money and his health and all these different areas that I just really was quite messy in. And so being with him has definitely not been a honeymoon. Like there was definitely a few months of that sort of honeymoon period, but it wasn't the honeymoon that I'd had with other relationships. Really straight away, it really shined a light on where I needed to take more self-responsibility. And what I've had to learn through this relationship is to be kind to myself and not beat myself up that he's brought up these addictive behaviors in me, and actually just bless him and bless them that they're there, and just a day at a time work with them. And the more that I develop healthy habits during my day to avoid being in an addictive pattern, the more creative inspiration talks to me.
Beautiful. And what's the inspiration for you, like, that made you want to share this with the rest of the world to help everyone else find love? Like, what does it mean for you? Or maybe I should ask, what does it mean to the spiritual love guru to help people find aligned love? Like, how does that fit into her vision?
Yeah, it's not like I'm sitting here feeling like my purpose in life is to help people find aligned love. That would be a total lie if I was like, oh, this is my message for the world. It really, really isn't. Like, my message for the world is to be radically honest with yourself and others, and to be authentic, and to follow that creative inspiration. And really, the creative inspiration was telling me to do the show. So I'm just following my creative inspiration. I'm not intellectually sitting here like, this is my message and this makes sense for me as an entrepreneur, because in a lot of ways the show did make sense as an entrepreneur, because it meant that I got to build my brand, people got to see me perform, and in that way. But yeah, the message was around dating. It's not like I have courses and coaching around dating. I mean, I had to get in experts in to interview them because it's definitely not my niche. So it's not like it was a strategic business move, and it's not like I'm sitting here with, that's my reason for living and breathing, is helping people find aligned love. I mean, if you see aligned love as full love of all parts of yourself, and you see aligned love as being truly connected to the divine, then yes, that is my message. But if it's to do with romantic love and two people coming together, I feel like if two people coming together will help you be more connected to God and be more connected to the sacred and to the divine, that is beautiful. But that is not the only way to be able to connect with the divine. There is an infinite amount of ways. You just got to find the way that's good for you and what's right at that point of your life. I mean, for me, 3.5 years ago, being in the midst of the 4-man plan, dating was my spiritual practice. It brought up all of my stuff to look at. Well, now, yes, my relationship is that, but it's more what my relationship magnifies, which is my relationship with food and my relationship with money, and how I'm not very healthy in those areas. And when I'm actually become healthier in those areas, I am more connected to the divine, which is what my message is for the world.
Yeah, really powerful. It's all just about helping people grow and helping them expand as individuals. And I feel that's what myself and all the other women and everyone and on the show really walked away with, is that it wasn't really about anyone finding partnership at all. We all just got to feel a lot more grounded and connected to ourselves and each other as a collective. Yeah, that was probably all of it. It's like, oh, this wasn't about partnership after all.
Well, partnership with self and partnership with God and partnership with other, you know.
Totally. And even how you shared, it didn't really feel like this is my message, but I just allowed it anyway. Like, that's so powerful too, that level of trust in the creativity that wants to move through. It's like so many people will think, oh no, that's not on brand, or that doesn't feel right. But ultimately, everything's all connected. It all fits into the bigger piece. And I really feel that, you know, mending or creating a new paradigm around like love and romance and dating is actually a big piece to how we expand in all other areas as well. So I love it. It was so time that we created something new aside from all of the bachelors and everything like that, because I know you even mentioned reality TV is not reality at all.
No, and I think that when the pandemics, you know, striked and it looked like the whole entertainment industry was going to fall apart, there was that real call for something new to be birthed. And so I just love that inspiration, you know, channeled that through me and said, okay, well, you're going to start a new paradigm of reality TV. And still, because we weren't, you know, filming everyone 24 hours a day, I don't think you really can get real TV. I mean, because at the end of the day, you're still just showing a slice of life. And the show was still a show. And so even though I think there was a lot more authenticity than your average reality TV show, there were still masks. And that's just actually really perfectly normal, and showing the human spirit that it is not normal to go out there and put your whole heart and, you know, heart on your sleeve in front of thousands of people without some kind of protection in place. I mean, and that was what was really beautiful about the journey, was watching everyone drop their masks and show a new part of themselves while still having their protective mask on, because you also were just, it was part of an hour show, you know, on Facebook. Like, people still needed to look after themselves. And even though it was raw and real, there was still, everyone still needed to look after themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You can never fully see it all, but there's something about, it was really dropped in. So I know that the audience, it's like there was so much that was happening in the unseen. It's like people really received that there was something important in this that really got to shift a lot of things in that space. And I think we're all like, okay, mission complete. You know, we don't entirely know the bigness of what happened, but we did something really amazing.
Yeah, and I still now, like, it's 2-3 weeks after the show's finished, and I'm still, you know, integrating and processing what that was and why it was inspired through me and what my next steps are. And I think that's where it's really interesting, because the entrepreneur in me is like, okay, well, what's next? What are you going to do next? And the other parts of me are like, no, Claire, just soften and just wait for God to talk to you. There is actually no rush. You didn't rush into creating the Facebook groups when everyone else was creating the Facebook groups. You actually waited for the creative inspiration to tell you what to do, not copying every single other person out there. And so it's kind of uncomfortable for me at the moment because I don't know what's next. Like, we have this audience and this group just sitting there, and the entrepreneurial brain will be like, let's create this and this and this. And yeah, it's really challenging but enlightening for me to just sit in the void and be like, I'm not going to do anything with this creation. Even though everyone's asking me, especially now because Melbourne's in lockdown 2.0, are you going to do another season even just for the Melbourne people? And I'm like, no, only if it comes through me. So
Beautiful. And what does it feel like? How can people start to connect to that in themselves? Like, if they're like, oh, like I have all these creative ideas and then my mind gets in the way, like what's one piece that you can kind of leave the listeners with as to how they can more deeply tune into this level of trust in their creative energy?
Doing a daily, or it doesn't even have to be daily, but a regular practice on the pieces of your creativity that bring you the most joy. So for me, it's just sitting at my keyboard, singing songs, not with an intention that I have to go and perform this song, that it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just in the flow of my practice. And that is when, at the most random moment, inspiration will talk to me. So most of the time, inspiration talks to me while I'm on my piano singing. Then at other times, having a shower or in the spa or after I've made love, or, these other times, I think it's doing those really simple things and just being patient. And when you then get that inspirational hit, you need to act on it straight away, because if you don't act on it straight away, within 48 hours, it is just all gone. And then someone else will take your idea and will flow with it, because if God gives it to you and you don't take action, within 48 hours, God's like, well, here's someone else to give this project to. No shame on you, but I'm going to give it to someone else because this needs to get out there in the world. So I've had so many people with so many of my projects I've done throughout the years say to me, oh, I had an idea to do that. And I was like, well, why didn't you act on it? And they were like, well, there was lots of preparation and I had to think about it. And I said, well, that's the difference, is that when it hits me, I just act on it. And the more I practice that, the more I let go of my perfectionism, because I can look back on the show and tell you about 800,000 ways it could have been better. But would it have been better because it would have been so much more strategic and so much more not connected to the current of the present moment? So, yeah.
Amazing.
That'd be just my inspiration, is for people, is to find those things that your body say yes to, whether it's going for a walk, having a spa, having a massage, making love, whatever it is, and do it just for the sake of doing it, for the pleasure of doing it, and not to get a result. And then in that inspiration, take it, follow it, create. And the other thing that's just coming to me is not judge others for the way they're creating, because the moment that you're judging others for the way they're creating something that's similar to you, then you're just blocking your own creative flow. So I've really had to learn how to not judge how other entrepreneurial women are using their creativity, and just bless them and celebrate them, and just be on my own path. And know that there's going to be a lot of people along the way that are triggered by me, maybe intimidated, jealous, bringing up their wounding, and not to take that personally. And just give myself permission to shine my light, but also to do it quite humbly, because as we, as you and I ventured through this, I shared with you that, when we put ourselves on a pedestal, we actually can't hear creative inspiration in the same way as we just humbly take ourselves off the pedestal. So yeah, people may be inspired and think you're great. It might think you're some spiritual love guru, but if you put yourself up on that pedestal, then no love will be flowing through you.
Amazing wisdom to end that with. And yeah, I hope it inspires the listeners, like if they've got this creative impulse, which I believe everyone has in their own unique way, to just follow what comes through and start to play with that. And who knows, you might have the next transformational reality show come through you.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Claire. It was so nice to switch roles for this chat.
I know, that was why I was so excited about this. I was like, yes, you can facilitate me.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's been lovely. I've loved this chat. And before we wrap up, is there anything that you'd like to share with the listeners, or maybe how they can connect with you, or any last final words that are really alive for you?
Well, my final words is definitely just to thank you and your team and everyone in your business for giving me this opportunity to share and have this chat. If people want to connect with me, I'm a late adopter to Instagram, but you can find me at Clare Elizabeth _D with Instagram. I'm Facebook, personal and professional page. And I have my website, so www.clareelizabethd.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you.